Shruti-smriti-purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat-padam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra-bhashya-kritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah-punaha Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti-bheda-vibhagine Vyomavad-vyapta-dehaya Dakshina-murtaye namaha Gukarastvandakaro vai Rukarastvanivartakaha Andhakara-nirodhitvat Gururitya-vidhiyate Sadashiva-samarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Bhadran Karnebhihi Shrunuyama Devaha Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraha Sthirairangaistuštuvagumsastanubhihi Vashema Devahitanyadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vriddhashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishwavedaha Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemihi Swasti no Brihaspatir Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let's chant the first two verses. We will start the second verse today. Om Athashlayano Bhagavantam Parameshtinam Upasametya Uvacha Adhihi Bhagavo Brahma Vidyam Varishtam Sada Satbhihi Sevyamananam Nigudham Yaya Chirat Sarva Papam Vyapohya Parat Param Purusham Yati Vidwan Tasmai Saho Vacha Pitamahascha Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yoga Tavehi. So, in the first verse, we talked about a prepared student who had qualified himself to understand this rather subtle knowledge, very difficult knowledge to understand, subtle knowledge. It's difficult to, one should be careful in saying difficult or not difficult, because it is something which is neither difficult nor easy. If one is not prepared, then it is difficult. Once it is prepared, it's very easy. And so this is a point that I'd like to just spend a couple of minutes discussing, and it's an important way of looking at it. We mentioned it very briefly in the first class. Oh, by the way, just mentioning the first class that we just concluded on Brahma Sutra, we were spammed by some porn messages on the chat window, and that must have been disturbing for some of you. I don't start the chat window until the end of the class, so I didn't see any of that, but it was a struggle to try to delete them, and Chandra was doing it, a lot of the other people were also doing it. I hope that does not happen now, but it could. It could very well be. So we'll have to figure out how to do that. Possibly going into a private channel, which I hope that doesn't happen, because it is good to make the talks available for anyone. Anyway, that's a separate thing altogether. So I had mentioned this in the first class also, that this is an important thing to see, really. It's a very beautiful and very important thing to see. What I mentioned in the first class, which I'll now do for those of you that did not attend the class, that when we see forms in our lives, which is a very natural thing, except for a very exceptional cases when you are born blind and you never really see anything. But for most of us, when we are born, we immediately open our eyes and we see forms. And all throughout the day and even during the dream, we are seeing forms. Now, when we are seeing forms, it is very natural to see that you could not see the forms without an eyes. It's a pair of eyes. You can see it with one eye, but generally with a pair of eyes. So the existence of an eye is easy to see because you see the forms. Because, in fact, this is exactly in the Kena Upanishad class on Vedantic insights, Pratibodha Viditam Matam Amritatvam hi vindate Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate amritam. Something like that. Verse number 4 of the second chapter. It's exactly what is pointing out. What is being pointed out is that because you see the forms, the means of seeing the form becomes obvious. So obvious, in fact, that we don't even think about it. It is because of the eyes that you see the forms. Having said that, you cannot see the eye itself. So this is what is called the swarupa of the eye, the nature of the eye, the color of the eyes and so on. You cannot see. The eyes allow you to see everything, but it is not possible to see the eye unless you have a reflecting surface. If you have a reflecting surface, you can see the eye. Otherwise, the eye cannot see itself, it can only see the forms. Okay, if this is the example, let us look at our looking at the experiences of life which are only possible through thoughts. Vrittis, what is called vritti. Vritti means the various subtle forms. You see, this is interesting. So there is a sthula form, a not so subtle forms that we see with the eyes open. And then we see the thoughts which are a subtle form of the forms. They are subtle forms. That we also see. And in fact, our entire life's experiences can be seen through these subtle forms only. In fact, even the sthula forms, sthula means outside, obvious, they are also seen through the mind itself, through thoughts itself. So when you see a table, you don't see a table, you see a table thought, which takes the form of the table, but you actually see a table form in the form of your thoughts, table thought. So the entire world is nothing but a bunch of thoughts. This is a fact. This is something that I have to see. So now let us continue. If I see all the thoughts, if I am living, if I experience life and I'm living and I see all the thoughts, by what am I seeing the thoughts? You see the point? If you're seeing forms, you're seeing the forms through the eye, that you cannot see itself. Similarly, because you are seeing all the thoughts, you are seeing the thoughts because of something that you cannot see. Who is that? Who is that through which? What is the equivalent of the eyes that allows me to see internal thoughts? So this is the subtle, this is what we said, the prepared person who came in to see the subtle forms. Who is that? What allows me to see the subtle thoughts? Because I can see the thoughts themselves. I can feel the thoughts, but what is by what mechanism am I seeing the thoughts? Very obvious, because if I see the forms, there must be an eye. Locham drishyam lochanam drik. As we saw in Drikdisha Viveka, very first verse. So similarly, I am also seeing the various thoughts. There must be some mechanism for me to see the thought. What is the equivalent of the eye? What is the internal eye? I cannot see the internal eye without a reflecting surface. This has to be clear. That reflecting surface are the words of wisdom by Shastra, by the Shruti, by the spiritual wisdom. That becomes the equivalent of a mirror. Okay? So this is exactly what we are doing. We are putting a mirror to ourselves to see what is it that allows me to have all these thoughts. In the Kena Upanishad, the very first one is, the very first verse of the Kena Upanishad is exactly like that. He says, Kena ishitam preshitam manaha. By which mechanism do the minds work? This is a very intelligent question. It's not an obvious question. We go around in our life saying the mind works, so what's the big thing about it? If you look into it, it's a very big thing. It can lead to complete freedom. So I'm coming back to, I started with, is it difficult or easy? That's the question I raised. So I'm going through an answer for that. So our acharyas say that like seeing a mirror which shows you the nature of your eye. When you look yourself in the mirror, then you can say, oh, my eyes. Okay, you can touch it. What you're seeing is the touch in the mirror, but through this you can also feel this is what my eye looks like. So like a reflecting surface shows you the eyes, here the spiritual wisdom, the words, introduce you to what is it that allows you to see the various thoughts. Okay, so far we are together on this? All right. Now comes the issue of difficulty versus easy. So our acharyas say, is it difficult or easy to see your reflection in the mirror? Not a question of difficult or easy, you just see it. You walk up to a mirror and If you need a light, switch on the light. There you have it, instantaneously. Except if the mirror has got a lot of dirt on it. So much so, as I think you may have had some experiences with it. I think certainly when we were growing up, we had some. There are mirrors that have been disused for years, and dirt and all kinds of stuff can actually get caked in. So a mirror that has a little bit of dirt in it can be easily seen. All you have to do is to take some paper towel or some cloth towel and just wipe it. You're done. But supposing the surface of the mirror over the long period of time, lying outside on the ground perhaps, has got so much of the dirt caked in that it requires a lot of rubbing. So it requires some work. So that is the difficulty. So that is the difficulty by which you clean the mirror. And supposing the mirror is lying on the ground, it's not facing you, and you're rubbing it, you're pushing, in fact you put some spray of some cleaner, and then you rub it again and so on. Then once it is clean, you can tilt it to see yourself, and you now see your eyes that allow you to see all the forms. This is the difficulty in preparing the reflecting surface. Seeing yourself is neither difficult nor easy. But preparing the reflecting surface has either ease or difficulty depending upon how caked in the dirt is. That being the case, now we can go back to Kaivalya Upanishad. In the Kaivalya Upanishad it is said that Ashvayalana I still have, forgive me, I shouldn't be having this issue anymore, and the name of the person. So let me go to, is Ashvalayana. That's the name of the student, Ashvalayana. Ashvalayana had done all the work in cleaning the reflecting surface. And what is the reflecting surface and where does it not cleaned up? That is in our mind, in our thinking. So this should be thought over and made very clear. So what happens is that the same Atma, which is, and this is going to come in today's lesson in more detail, but I'm just giving you the introduction to it. The same Atma which is pure and loving and peaceful, full of forgiveness, non-conflict. The goal for all of us is the same Atma. But when it gets reflected in different minds, there's only one original subject. This is the same Parameshwara, same Paramatma. That is the very content of all of us, as the very Sakshi, as we know this by now. But where it gets reflected has a different form to it. If it gets easily reflected by a mind that has been cleaned up, it becomes very peaceful. The jiva becomes the human being, because the human being is the one which is looking at its own reflection in our own minds. This is exactly what it is. And what I see in my mind is a copy of myself based on how clean or unclean my mind is. And unclean means a mind that does not reflect the peacefulness of myself. And if it doesn't, the opposite of peacefulness comes in, conflict comes in, as we will see in a minute. And you see that unhappiness comes in, and criminality can come in. I take myself to be a small person, unacceptable to myself, and I don't like it, and I do something about it. All kinds of actions that are unbecoming also become as a result of that. You know, one, I think, very good way to look at it is that even during the day when the sun is shining and it's very bright, if you get into a room which is completely blocking the sun off, even the windows have shades on them. You often see this. One of my wife's relatives, one time we go to their house, and it was like 10:30 or 11 o'clock. And we asked her, where is she? She says, well, she's sleeping. She's sleeping? How late? How? Because normally when the sun gets up, then it's a wake-up call. You should be awake even before the sun, but certainly after the sun wakes up. So what she did was to completely she's very particular. And she probably works late at night and so on, and she wants to sleep in. So it's not I'm not criticizing her. But certainly the way she did that was to have complete window coverings that does not allow the sun to come at all. It's completely dark, even at 11 o'clock during the day. So also, it's the same sun that is shining in the hearts of all of us. But if our minds have a surface which has been caked in, it doesn't reflect it. This is why, even though the same Atma is there in a Mahatma, as well as a terrorist, same Atma, but the terrorist has extreme unhappiness about himself, or he has been brainwashed by other people, whatever. And this is the very interesting thing in our evaluating some of the religions, where the means justify the ends. They say if you just kill people against a particular religious thought, you'll be okay. Not so in the Vedic thinking. The means and ends must be consistent. If the end is peacefulness, then the means should also be peaceful. Otherwise you cannot, that doesn't compute. Anyway, not looking into that too much. So here's the thing. What needs to be done is the reflecting surface needs to be clean. The mind needs to be clean. And we'll be talking a lot more about that as we go along. So now to close off this lengthy topic, it is neither difficult nor easy. It's possible that the reflecting surface, which is mind in our case, needs to be made subtle, needs to be cleaned up. And the biggest problems we have is our likes and dislikes. We get so hung up on it that they have a sense of reality over us and engulfs us in actions that are unbecoming to us. That needs to be lowered. And so slowly I need to learn to calm down and not be so hung up on likes and dislikes. That is the whole message of Vedanta. So close off this topic. If your mind is ready, the reflection to understand who you are is very automatic. Like seeing your eye in the mirror, it doesn't take any effort. You just stand in front and you see it. But if the reflecting surface has got a lot of dirt that you cannot even see yourself, then you've got some work to do. So, in the first verse, Ashvalayana approached the teacher and said, "Sir, I have prepared myself for this subtle vidya. Can you please teach it to me? Because I have some doubts. Perhaps people may have talked about it, but I have a lot of questions. You are the person who can solve it for me. Can I please learn it from you?" So then the Pitamaha, Pita means the grandfather. Grandfather is the Brahmaji, not Brahman, but the Brahmaji, the Brahma, the masculine, the firstborn in an era, in a yuga. The firstborn is Brahmaji. That Brahmaji was the one who was the first teacher of this yuga. Also the only teacher is Parameshwara, but in this yuga, the first reflecting person who was a jiva was Brahmaji. So he immediately started teaching. And he taught him without any delay. But he just said, okay, what you need to do is to make sure that 3 things are kept in mind as you learn. Shraddha, Bhakti, Dhyana Yogat, Avehi. Avehi means may you understand, may you get it, may you see the answer to your own question by the yoga, by the strength, by the yoga here would be the skill of 3 aspects to it. One is Shraddha, one is Bhakti, and one is Dhyana. So he immediately starts talking to him. So as Swami Viditatmananda had beautifully mentioned here, that in the Prashna Upanishad, I think I may have mentioned it even last time. So this, by the way, in the second verse begins with page number 58, and the title of that is An Examination of Means and End. So means is sadhana and the end is sadhya. What is to be established is the goal. How is it to be established is the sadhana. The examination of those two aspects, their relative aspects of that, is the subject of this second verse of the chapter of this book. So here Swami Viditatmananda very nicely pointed out that in the Prashna Upanishad, it is famous that the story of 6 people that had some questions about the whole world and how to become totally happy, what is necessary to be done, all those kinds of things. 6 of them had their own questions. And they said, we have heard that there is a teacher who seems to really be a Mahatma and he knows the answers to these questions. Can we all go there as a group and convince him to really start teaching us in a very structured manner so all of our answers all our questions get answered? So they approached this guy. And in the Prashna Upanishad, each one of them had a question. They all approached him. Before even asking the question, they said, can you please teach it to us? So the teacher said, I don't know you. Can you please stay with me for 1 year? And I want to observe you and also encourage you to live a life of austerity and devotion to me. And if you are able to do that, then after 1 year, you please ask your questions, and if I am able to answer them, he was very humble about it, I will be happy to do so. So he wanted to see their preparedness. How are they just casual people or are they serious people? Like that. Here on the other hand, in the Kaivalya Upanishad, when Ashvalayana approached Brahmaji already knew that he is a pretty well qualified person. But he still wanted to make sure that he talks about the preparation and emphasizes what needs to be done. And he picks out 3 things: Shraddha, Bhakti, and Dhyanam. So that's what it says. Tasmai Saha Ha Uvacha. To him, the grandfather said, may you know through Shraddha, which is trust in the teaching, Bhakti, which is commitment, and Dhyana, which is meditation. Let's look at Shraddha first. Excellent background. Really, Swami Viditatmananda, really just, all I have to do is to summarize his teachings. And this is why I was so impressed when he taught it to us. How complete, how simple, how structured his explanations are, following the words of Brahmaji, Pitamaha. So he says, look at Shraddha first. Shraddha means a faith which is verifiable. That's what Shraddha means. So faith can be either verifiable or not verifiable. There is faith which is not verifiable. So even in Vedanta, initially the faith about heaven and hell, about life after death, about karma and karma phala, about punyam and papam, about drishtaphalam and adrishtaphalam. Drishtaphalam means right there and then. So as you know, what that means is the nature of our actions are that if we do some action, it has two parts to it. Not the action itself, but the results of the action has two parts to it. One is immediately done and obvious. The other one is called stored for later. So for instance, they say that if you take an initiative a positive initiative, which you did not need to take, positive initiative that you didn't need, but you did it out of your own goodwill, then it has two parts to it. One is some positive results immediately visible to you. The other one is a stored result which has been deposited into your account for later gratification. There's a story that I forget which of the early American presidents. I don't think it was George Washington. Could have been George Washington. I read it somewhere and I don't remember which president it was. So he was going in a horse carriage. He's the president of the United States. And he was being driven in a horse carriage and he was wearing all of the clothes, regalia with beautiful silk shirts and all that, so on and so forth. And he was being he was being driven. When he went on the way, he saw that there was a pig that was stuck in mud, not able to get out. Because that's what happens in a mud, that the person needs some help to get out. It cannot do itself because it doesn't find enough footing. So he stopped the carriage driver and said, we need to help this guy, otherwise he's going to really just not be able to get out here. So apparently he just took his jacket off and dived into the mud and maybe with the help of somebody, I don't know all the details, pulled that pig out and made it live, and it was an animal, not even a human being. So they say that this was, and then of course he was all muddy and in bad shape. So he had to go home and take a shower, change his clothes, finds an hour lost. But at least he was able to save the life of this pig. So now in this case there are two results, two segments of the results. One is that he saved the pig, and the pig was of course happy about it and so on. But more than that, his attitude had a stored result, which was going out of his way, which he didn't need to, and it was deposited into his account for later. This is called punya. Some good things will happen to him later on. So this is what is called Drishtaphala, seen phala, and Adrishtaphala, unseen result. So that also you cannot prove it. You can say, oh no, I don't see any, I don't see that happening. Same thing, by the way, is true in the opposite side. And that is that you can do some, they say, it's very interesting, that in one case, a criminal kills a person and gets punished for the killing. In the other case, a doctor, in the conduct of his surgery, kills a patient but is well lauded as trying his best to save the person and was not able to do it. And he gets accolades and recognition later on. So the Drishtaphala is the same. In both cases, the subject got killed, but the Adrishtaphala are opposite to each other. Anyway, going back to verifiable faith and unverifiable faith, there is even in Vedanta unverifiable faith, which is karma phala, then life after death, etc., etc. You cannot verify it. But then there is verifiable faith. What are the examples of the verifiable faith? Well, we can see that in the case of science as E is equal to mc squared, and in a lot of other cases. In fact, a very simple cases would be where somebody will say, you can, if you go to such and such place, they are distributing some free food. So now you need to have a faith in the person that what he or she said is in fact true. Now if you say, oh, this person, is non-trustworthy, he doesn't really, I can't rely on that person, you may not be able to. But suppose you have a faith in the person that what he or she said, that they are actually distributing free food, and if you are in the need to get some food, you can get to that place either in a bus or whatever it is, and indeed they have distribution of food that time. So this is a verifiable faith. In the verifiable faith means that you don't see that now, but if you do some actions, you will see it later for sure. Okay, so this being the case, now let us apply to Vedanta and the Shraddha. This is a very interesting case that I have a certain idea about who I am, what my life is all about. All my ideas about who I am and what my life is all about has one assumption, which is not just a foolish assumption, it's a realistic assumption. And that is that I am a limited body-mind owner. I have a body, I have a mind, and I have sense organs, and all my transactions are with respect to that, including, for example, celebrating the birthdays. So this has become very common. Then you have birthdays. It was interesting that when I was a youngster, born in Amritsar. At that time, this birthday celebration was not a big thing. Much of the time, even the parents didn't quite remember exactly which day you were born. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and so this person put the only time when you had to declare your birthday was when you went to school, when you entered into a school. And then when you graduated and so on, so some birthday had to be given. There was, I think maybe rules have changed now, you have to certify through the government which day you were born. But in those days that was not the case. So you know what people would do? They would change their birthday to suit their own requirements. So for instance, someone was telling me this in India, there was a mandatory retirement age for government officials at 55, at the age of 55. So you cannot, 55 you retire. You're supposed to just, even if you're doing well in the job and something, that's it. You cannot work anymore. So as the longevity improved, people found a way to circumvent it. So what they would do is to put their ages in such a way that you're really 58 when you retire, but you feel your age is written as 55. So like that, there was uncertainty about ages. And I remember that when we used to celebrate birthdays or anything like this. I think my mother, because I used to stay with my grandparents, and so my mother would write a letter to her parents, my grandparents, and saying, when he was born, whenever I was born, please maybe take him out somewhere and give him some sweets. That was it. Somebody that I just found out that my mom used to say that. She had already sent them a letter ahead of time. Very minor. And so really speaking, when we have a birthday, we're celebrating the wrong thing. We're celebrating the birth of the body, not of the Atma. The Atma is never born. It is already there as consciousness. That is my nature. There is no birthday for it. But in any case, what happens is that all the transactions in my life, this is what I said earlier, and I'll come back to it, are with respect to an assumption about my status with a particular body and mind. This is my thinking, my behavior, everything is with respect to that. Now comes Shastra. And the Shastra says, no, that's not true. You are taking a completely wrong view of who you are and what your behavior is acceptable to you. You are behaving as though you are a born individual with limited capability, with limited time, and you're going to disappear. This is how you are taking it. This is wrong, purely wrong. The truth is totally different, it's diametrically opposite to what you're thinking. This is a message that I don't normally take easily. This is such a departure, drastic departure from what my thinking is, that I need to have a lot of Shraddha. Lots of Shraddha. Because at every step of the way, first of all, I should at least pause to at least look at it and reflect on it. I don't do that. I don't do that. If I went to a social get-together and says, supposing I do this, I just went to one of the large social get-togethers after the COVID. Quite a few people there, 50, 60 people. Supposing I tell the host, can I have 3 minutes to talk in front of you? He says, you want to talk to everybody? I said, yes. What do you want to talk about? He says, I don't know. Can I have it? He says, well, I don't know how will it be. Okay, fine, all right. So I get up and say, may I have everybody's attention, please? I have a message for you. You're all individuals, aren't you? People will look at me and say, what do you mean? Of course. Aren't you? Do you know this is all wrong? And you are actually never born? So people, what will they do? They will start eating some hors d'oeuvres or something. He says, this guy is crazy. What's he talking about? And then I sit down. And the host will also feel very embarrassed that I created such a ruckus amongst people on something that absolutely has no relevance in the people's lives. How is that going to happen? So people don't even listen to it. If this Shastra message is given, we just ignore it. And after it is given, we fight it every step of the way. Even after it is given. Supposing that you and I are very unusual and we get caught in this thinking that yes, there is a possibility that I am it's a possibility that I am unlimited. But then our own mind, our own conduct, our belief system, our behavior undermines it at every step of the way. What are you talking about? How is that possible? It rebels against it. And the mind says, no, but I think that that person seems pretty sincere and he seems to be pretty knowledgeable. He's been studying for a long time. I think we should do that. The other side says, are you sure? What if this doesn't? Is that your experience? And you say, no, it's not my experience. So then why are you? Anyway, I'm just making it dramatic, but the point is that every step of the way, we don't accept it, and we stop pursuing it. We are discouraged. We becomes impatient. All the kinds of things happen. So one of the first things that Brahmaji told the student is, please keep your Shraddha, which is a verifiable belief. Don't make things even more difficult for you to make to make it into some kind of a drama where you say, I don't know what will happen. Don't keep on doubting it along the way. Stay with it. But stay with it not to a point where you will die saying, I don't know what happened. It will come. It will be clear to you. It should be clear to you right now. You just have to clean this mind. And it will become very clear to you. Verifiable belief. So this is a very important thing that here Swami Viditananda so pointed out so well that in fact I think let me see whether he's making that point as part of Shraddha. Yeah, no, that comes later on, so I won't make that point now. How are we doing with time? 10:55. Let me see if there are some points that I want to bring up. Yeah, so a couple of points. I think there are two things that I would like to add to this, and then we go to Bhakti. One is that this is a very good point on page number 62, where it says that my sense of who I am is full of certain biases and notions, highly subjective, based on my background and how, who taught me and who was bringing me up and how I treat myself. I'm not talking about the world, just about the view of myself. It's highly subjective. So, for instance, if you have not been very successful in your life, suppose you have been struggling to show some results and you were not the best student, and most of us are like that, then you tend to doubt yourself. That, I'm incapable. I can't do this. I have some things that I am able to do, but in general I'm not strong enough. I have problems, etc., etc. So I make a conclusion about myself which may not be accurate. In fact, most of the cases it is not. The point is that I have a subjective view of myself, and which is harmful. That's the word I was looking for, which is harmful to my subjectivity is harmful to me. I'm actually better than what I think I am. So, Swami Viditananda says that the one important element of Shraddha is that I take an objective view to myself, not a subjective view of myself. Objective view means that the Shastra sees something in me that I'm missing. It's very obvious. If they are going to give me an opposite conclusion, then obviously it is different from my own view. But the point is that the Shastra says, don't carry certain burdens that you don't need to. Look at yourself objectively. And I will now reveal to you your strengths that was unknown to you. So this idea of objectivity versus subjectivity is an element of the Shraddha. This is an important thing. This is number one. Then the second part is to find a teacher, and I think we covered this in the last few weeks, so I won't really belabor this. Find a teacher who has two elements, two requirements. One who has studied the Shastra in some depth. Because even though the conclusions are very simple, but the depth is considerable. There's a lot of complexity of our mind that needs to be gone through. And it requires years of study to remove all my doubts and to come up with something which hangs together. Has my teacher gone through such a study? This is an important element of selecting the teacher. The second one is, perhaps there are three aspects. The second one is the teacher adopting the same view of life as he or she is talking about? Is there a gap between what he says and what he does? It shouldn't be. And I think the one final thing is that Swamiji also has pointed out, does this teacher have an agenda? Some kind of an agenda. And let me tell you, this is not uncommon to find hidden agendas. Not uncommon at all. When I look at many of the teachers, they also are wanting to be full. They also have agendas that they're fulfilling for themselves. Most of the time it is recognition. You want to have other people saying you are great. That's a hunger for recognition. They may also have ulterior motives about growing something to be big, making an ashram, becoming popular. Swami Dayanandji, I think I remember very early on, in the satsangs, he would say this. He says, I fear for people who are good talkers and they become popular early on in their lives. And the reason for that is that he says that I find they get so taken in by the adulation of their students that they stop growing as much as they need to. Beautiful sentiments. And you find this sometimes. You find people who are very glib, very articulate, and they attract a lot of students. We see this in the Western world, even in India, but certainly in the Western world. Your way you articulate and the way you see this on television and so on, how smooth the talkers there are. And you say, wow, these guys must be really good. I'm sorry to say this, but this is what I remember about Deepak Chopra. He was so articulate and so on. But I can tell you from my knowledge, he's not a deep person. He has not studied the subject matter. Whatever little knowledge is a dangerous thing. Anyway, I don't want to just attack an individual. He's fine the way he is. But the point is that there are agendas that are hidden, and you need to be careful about that. So that's what it is. You have to find a teacher who is both knowledgeable, who has no agenda, and has a lifestyle that reflects the teaching. If you find a person like that, that's all that you need to do. Then it's a matter of availability of time and so on and so forth. So that is the last point about the Shraddha. And I think that is all given from 58 to the page 63. And again, I would urge you to carefully go through all of that. Okay? Once you have Shraddha, meaning once you have this kind of an attitude. Oh, one last thing that I would mention regarding Shraddha, and I think I've mentioned that before to you, it may be a repetition. I remember this so well. As we were graduating from our course, I still remember the scene. This was a sunny day and we had a big tent because we had invited a lot of people for the closing ceremony of our 2.5-year course. And Swamiji was just giving his valedictory speech, and we were getting ready for lunch. And then there was a kind of like saying question answers and so on. And I don't know what came over me, but I raised my hand. And I said, Swamiji, if there is one thing that I need in my life to make sure that I complete this journey, this was back in 1982 when we graduated from PRC. There's one thing that I need in my life. What would that be? And I had not even completed my sentence completely. Like a second later he says, Shraddha. Shraddha. And in fact the Upanishads all point out, he says, I think it is pointed out here. Yeah. In the Bhagavad Gita, I don't remember the chapter and so on, Lord Krishna says, this is given on page number 63, Shraddhavan eva labhate jnanam. Very important thing. He says that the verifiable Shraddha alone is what is needed for the completion of this. Don't lose heart in the middle. Don't waste unnecessary time doubting. Just go for it. And you will be able to see this very clearly. Shraddha. Then after that comes Bhakti. Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yogat Avehi. This is the second line of the second verse. Bhakti. What does it really mean? So, here Swami Viditatmananda once again has given very good words to describe what this is. Commitment to knowledge. Beautiful. That's all that one requires. Commitment. And so, commitment means that I don't do this for the sake of anything else or anyone else. I think, for example, I think he's pointed this out somewhere. I was just reading it last night just to refresh my thinking. I can't remember where it is there. So there comes a point where the values and goals that we have are not as a result of what I studied in Bhagavad Gita or what the teacher says. This is what the Bhagavad Gita says, so it must be true. It must be valuable. That is true in the beginning. But in the end, my commitment and bhakti transforms that to my values and my thinking, not Bhagavad Gita's values and thinking. This is the end result of the bhakti. I need to transfer the vision of the Shastra to my vision. One time Swami Dayanandji had pointed this out. I remember this so well. He says, I would caution you to be permanent students. You need to be a student, but all the time cognizant of the fact that you need to stop being a student and be qualified yourself. Because there's a certain comfort that people have. I'm studying and I'm still working on it. Hey, how long? This is not the end. And I must say that I pat myself on the back, that very early on I thought that I just don't want to be a student of the Swamis. I want to become as knowledgeable as the Swamis. And part of that was the instructions from Swamiji and my own thinking. And if I'm not a sannyasi and wearing ochre clothes and giving up that's okay, I am not that. But at least the understanding of that, not easy, but the understanding that comes with renunciation, with being a sannyasi, I need to have that. I need to adopt that in my own life. And so, my bhakti was to transform the ideas to myself, my own life. So here, one very important thing that Swami Viditatmananda has pointed out, and I think that's all the time that we'll have, and I probably would need to review this again. What Vedanta says is, the source of all of your problems in life is a confusion about who you really are. Because we are always looking for a cause of my problems in life. I'm looking at how can I counteract it. And to a certain extent, there are topical things that you need to take care of. Very simply, if you are hungry, then you cannot say that hunger is, I'm going to refuse to eat because I'm not the body. Well, before you are clear about it. If you are clear about it, then you are really not required to eat. But until you are clear about it, you need to go on until your inquiry becomes complete. So, there are topical things that you need to take care of. If you have a job to do, do the job. If you have a family to take care of, take care of the family. If you're hungry and thirsty, please eat and drink. All of that needs to go on. But all we're saying is that deep down below, if we think the cause of my problems is the world, someone other than me who's bugging me, no, it's not. I have to delve deep down into it and say, as Swamiji points out so well, this is so well stated that I will go through this one more time next time. But as Swamiji stated very beautifully, this is one of his favorite statements actually, Swami Viditatmananda, that the world acts as a trigger for you, and actually from that standpoint it does you a favor. When things go wrong to you, instead of blaming the world, we should thank the world. Thank you for pointing out that I've got a problem that I have to solve. Instead, I kick the tires further down the road. This is a terrible person. I don't know what came over that person. Why is he criticizing me so much? This, that, or the other. Or the world is going wrong things to me. Instead of blaming everything else, I should take that opportunity to inquire about myself further. So this is a tough question to adopt as my mantra. This is the mantra in my life. The mantra in my life is all the problems I'm facing in my life is my doing. I alone can solve it. Some topical help here and there, like for example, if I'm hungry, I need to go to the grocery store, get some things to eat, make a sandwich, whatever it is. That's not what we are talking about. But the fundamental aspects of my life, as Swami Dayanand so aptly used to point out, you are the problem and you are the solution. This is a message that I have to be committed to understanding and doing something about. This is what commitment and bhakti is all about. Beautifully pointed out. We're not talking about some kind of an artificial bhakti where I go and pray to the Lord. All those are there, but the real commitment and bhakti is I don't lose sight of the fact that I can solve this. I may need the help of Ishvara to solve it, but I am committed to solve it. So this is the real meaning of the word bhakti, and I might revise it a little bit next week, and then we will go to the third one, which is called dhyanam, and with that our second verse would be complete. So with that I close the class. Om asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Alright, let's see. Right? There's a question from Professor RNCYICHTP. Don't understand. Anyway, so it says, can you please give the name of the book being explained? You must be someone new to this class. So we are studying the Kaivalya Upanishad. And this was the copy that I'm using is the commentary on the Kaivalya Upanishad by Swami Viditatmananda. And we have given out those copies free of cost to all the students, and I think we still have some more copies, so if you can write to me, I'll be happy to send that to you. I don't see any chat messages that were intruded upon. I don't know whether Chandra was able to do something or we were just lucky this time. Don't see any one of those. So anyway, we will try to look into that. I don't see any other questions from you. So with that, thank you for all tuning into this class, and hope to see you next week. Om.